The blade entered between my ribs with the intimate precision of a lover's touch. "I'm sorry, Mother," my daughter Seraphine whispered, her breath warm against my ear as I collapsed against the throne. "But you've ruled for too long. The kingdom needs new blood. Blood." Yes, there was blood now, mine, spreading across the white marble floor of the throne room like a crimson sunrise. The same floor where I'd crowned her heir just 3 months prior, believing her tears of joy were genuine. Through dimming vision, I watched her turn to address the assembled court. My court. The nobles who'd sworn oaths on their ancestors' graves stood silent, some averting their eyes, others openly smiling. Lord Craven, my chancellor of 40 years, actually bowed to her. "The queen has fallen ill," Seraphine announced, her voice steady practiced. "A tragic decline of the mind. She attacked me in her confusion, and in defending myself, she gestured to me, crumpled and bleeding. The physicians will confirm her madness. They'll find the poppy derivatives in her evening wine, the ones that have been administered for months. Months. The word echoed through my fading consciousness. The strange dreams, the moments of lost time, the whispers I dismissed as paranoia, all real. All her design. "Guards," she commanded, "take the former queen to the hollow cells. Let her recover in solitude." The hollow cells. Ancient dungeons carved into the bedrock beneath the palace, where my ancestors had imprisoned traitors and kinslayers. The irony wasn't lost on me, even as rough hands seized my arms. They dragged me down through passages that grew colder and damper. The wound in my side screamed with each stone step. When they finally threw me into a cell, I heard the iron door clang shut with the finality of a coffin lid. Darkness swallowed me whole. I don't know how long I lay there. Time lost meaning in the absolute blackness of the hollow cells. My wound festered, infection turning my blood to fire. Delirium came in waves. I saw my late husband's face, heard my son's laughter, dead these 10 years from plague, felt phantom hands braiding my hair the way my mother once had. In my lucid moments, I understood I was dying. The cell was aptly named. The walls seemed to swallow sound, swallow hope, swallow everything except suffering. I'd sentenced 3 people to these cells in my 40-year reign, each time with the certainty of justice. Now I wondered if they too had screamed until their throats bled, if they too had clawed at the stones until their fingernails peeled away. "Gods above," I croaked into the darkness, "if you have any mercy." Nothing. The gods had been silent for 3 generations, ever since the sundering. My grandmother had been the last monarch to claim divine favor, and even she'd admitted hearing only echoes. So I stopped reaching upward. Instead, I pressed my ruined hands against the cold stone floor and whispered downward. "Below," I breathed. "Whatever dwells below. I am Queen Elara Morgaine, daughter of shadows, mother of betrayal. I offer anything, everything, for the power to take back what was stolen from me." The darkness shifted. It was subtle at first, like the air itself was listening. Then the stones beneath my palms grew warm. Not the fever warmth of my infected wound, but something alive, something ancient and aware. A voice rose from the depths, neither male nor female, carrying the weight of buried centuries. "Queen of dust and broken oaths, daughter of a line that once knew us. You call to the deep ones, to those who dwelt here before your ancestors built their pretty towers over our bones." I tried to rise, but managed only to prop myself against the wall. What are you?" "We are the forgotten. The first gods, buried when the younger deities claimed the sky. Your people built this palace upon our temple, your cells within our sanctum. For 1,000 years, we have tasted the suffering of those imprisoned here. Your despair is exquisite. Then help me," I gasped. "Grant me the strength to reclaim my throne, to make my daughter pay for—" "Silence." The word was a physical force that stilled my tongue. "We care nothing for your petty human grievances, Queen of Dust. But we have been trapped, bound by the celestial pacts your grandfather's grandfather sealed. We hunger for the world above, for the taste of sunlight after millennia of stone." The warmth beneath my hands intensified, and I felt something, a presence, coiling around my consciousness like smoke. "We will grant you power, Elara Morgaine. Power to shatter your chains and reclaim your crown. But the price is this, your heart. My life." Death seemed a mercy compared to rotting in the cell. "No, Your heart, the organ of love, of mercy, of all soft human weakness. We will hollow it out and make it our vessel. Through you, we will taste the world again. Through you, we will remember what it means to walk in the light. I should have hesitated. Any sane person would have. But I remembered Seraphine's blade sliding between my ribs. I remembered Lord Craven's bow. I remembered being dragged like refuse through my own palace while my daughter played the grieving air. Do it, I said. There is no returning from this bargain. You will become something other, something more and less than human. The person you were will die in this cell, and what emerges will be our instrument as much as yours. I don't care. I accept. The darkness laughed, a sound like continents grinding together. Then welcome, Queen of the Hollow Throne. Let the pact be sealed in blood and shadow.
Pain. Not the dull ache of my infected wound or the sharp agony of broken bones, but something fundamental. Something that reached into the core of my being and began to unright me. I felt my heart stop beating, actually felt the moment it stilled in my chest. Then something else took its place. Something vast and cold and eternally hungry pressed itself into the cavity where my heart had been, folding itself smaller and smaller until it fit within the compass of flesh and bone. My body convulsed. The infection that had been killing me burned away as my blood turned black as oil, then cleared to crimson again, but crimson with an undertone of shadow. The wound in my side sealed itself, leaving only a scar that pulsed with faint luminescence. I could feel them, the deep ones, coiled within my chest, whispering in a language older than words. And I could feel something else, power flowing through me like a dark river, reshaping muscle and sinew, reforging bone and nerve. When I opened my eyes, the darkness was no longer absolute. I could see the cell in shades of gray and deeper black, every crack in the stone, every scratch on the iron door. I could see the faint traces of magic woven into the walls, binding spells meant to suppress sorcery and prevent escape. I reached out and touched one of the spell marks. It shattered like glass. "Show me," I whispered. "Show me what you've given me." My hands moved of their own accord, tracing sigils in the air. Shadows peeled away from the walls, coalescing into forms, vaguely human but wrong, with too many joints and eyes that gleamed like distant stars. The hollow guard, the deep ones whispered into my mind. Warriors of the first age, bound to serve the bearer of our mark. They bowed to me, these impossible creatures, and I felt a savage satisfaction bloom in the hollow where my heart had been. I approached the cell door. It was solid iron, 3 inches thick, secured with locks and bars. I placed my palm against it and pushed. The metal screamed, groaned, and then tore from its hinges like parchment. The corridor beyond was empty. Of course it was. Who guards a dying woman in an inescapable cell? "Come," I commanded my shadow warriors. "We have a throne to reclaim."
I ascended through my own palace like a vengeful ghost, leaving a trail of unconscious guards in my wake. I didn't kill them, not yet. These were men who'd served my family for generations, and some part of me, the part that was still Alara, still human, remembered their names, their children, their loyalty. But that part was growing smaller. The deep ones whispered constantly now, a chorus of alien thoughts threading through my own. They showed me things, visions of the palace, as it had been 1,000 years ago when it was their temple, memories of power and glory before the sky gods had cast them down. And they showed me what Seraphine had been doing in the 3 days since my imprisonment. I saw her in the throne room, wearing my crown. I saw her signing decrees with my seal. I saw her in council with Lord Craven and the other nobles, consolidating her power with promises and threats. And I saw her meeting with him. The shadow man appeared in her chambers at midnight, coalescing from the darkness itself. He wore no face, only a mask of polished black stone carved with symbols that hurt to perceive. When he spoke, his voice was silk over steel. "You have done well, Seraphine Morgaine. Your mother is broken, your throne secured. Now you must fulfill your end of our bargain." Seraphine actually bowed to this creature. "The rites will begin on the new moon, just as you instructed. The sacrifices have been prepared. Good. When the veil is thinnest, we will complete the ritual. The Void King will have his gateway, and you will rule a kingdom that spans both worlds. Your mother sought to keep the old powers buried, but you are wiser. You understand that to rule, one must embrace all sources of power. The vision faded, but the implications remained clear. Seraphine hadn't simply betrayed me for the crown. She'd made her own pact with something from beyond the veil between worlds. She intended to open a gateway, to unleash something called the Void King. She meddles with forces beyond her comprehension. The deep ones hiss through my thoughts. The Void King is anathema even to us. It consumes all, light and shadow, matter and spirit. If she succeeds, there will be nothing left to rule, nothing left to claim. For the first time since making my pact, I felt something like fear. Not for myself, that capacity seemed to have died in the cell, but for the kingdom itself. For the people I'd spent 40 years protecting. How long until the new moon? I asked. 3 days, the deep ones confirmed. 3 days to stop Seraphine, to prevent whatever catastrophe she was preparing. I emerged from the dungeons into the palace proper, just as dawn broke. Servants screamed at the sight of me. I must have looked like death itself, dressed in rotting prison rags, accompanied by beings of living shadow. But I paid them no mind. I walked through corridors I'd traveled 10,000 times, past portraits of my ancestors, past the great windows that overlooked the capital city spreading below the palace heights. Everything looked the same, yet felt alien. The deep ones saw through my eyes and found the world both familiar and strange, recognizing the bones of their ancient temple beneath the veneer of human architecture. I reached the throne room doors and placed my hands against the carved oak. Beyond, I could hear voices, Seraphine holding court, playing the role of benevolent new queen. "Shall we announce you?" the deep ones asked, amused. "No," I said. "Let's make an entrance." I pushed, and the doors exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Seraphine sat upon my throne, wearing my crown, wrapped in my royal vestments. She looked so much like me at her age that seeing her there was like gazing into a mirror that showed the past. The resemblance ended when she saw me. Terror flashed across her face, pure, primal terror, before she mastered it and rose to her feet. Around her, the assembled court erupted into chaos. Some fled, others drew weapons. Lord Craven simply stared, his face gone bloodless. "Impossible," Seraphine breathed. "You should be dead." I replied, my voice carrying the echo of the deep one's chorus. "I died in the cell you condemned me to. What stands before you now is something more." I stepped into the throne room, my hollow guard flowing around me like an oil slick. The soldiers who'd drawn weapons took one look at my shadow warriors and backed away. "How touching," Seraphine said, recovering her composure with impressive speed. "The Mad Queen returns with dark magic to threaten her own daughter. Guards! This creature is not your queen. It's an imposter, a demon wearing her face." "They won't help you," I said quietly. "They know who I am. They can feel it." And they could. I saw recognition in their eyes, mingled with terror. I was their queen, but I was also something else now, something that set every instinct screaming. Seraphine's hand moved to a pendant at her throat, black stone carved with those same reality-bending symbols I'd seen on the Shadow Man's mask. "Very well. If they won't stop you, I'll do it myself." She spoke a word that shouldn't exist, and shadows erupted from the pendant. But these were different from my hollow guard. These shadows writhed and screamed, pulling at the fabric of reality itself, opening tears into somewhere else. Things crawled through those tears, things with too many limbs, and mouths that opened onto infinite void. "You've been busy," I observed, even as my own shadow surged forward to meet her summoned horrors. The two forces collided in the center of the throne room, and the air itself began to crack. "I learned from the best," Seraphine shot back. "You always said a wise ruler uses every tool available." "Well, Mother, I found tools you never dreamed of. The Whisperer in Darkness taught me secrets that make your little earth spirits look like children's toys." "The Void King," I said. "You're planning to open a gateway for the Void King." Her smile was beautiful and terrible. "I'm planning to become more than just a queen. When the gateway opens, I'll be the bridge between worlds. I'll wield the power of the void itself. And you'll be nothing but a forgotten footnote, a mad old woman who couldn't adapt to changing times." The battle between our summoned forces was tearing the throne room apart. Marble cracked, tapestries burned with cold fire, reality itself thinned in places where the void creatures touched it. "Your void king will consume everything," I said, advancing toward her. "There will be no kingdom left to rule, no subjects to command. Only emptiness." "You're wrong." For the first time, real emotion broke through her facade. "The Whisperer promised me." The Whisperer lied. That's what void spawn do. They promise power while planning consumption. The Deep Ones surged through me, lending me their ancient knowledge. I could see now what Seraphine couldn't, or refused to see. The ritual she was planning wouldn't make her a bridge between worlds. It would make her the first course in a feast, a sacrifice to ease the Void King's passage. "Listen to me, Seraphine." I pushed more of my will into my voice, forcing her to meet my eyes. "You've been deceived. The entity you serve doesn't want an ally. It wants a doorway made of flesh and soul. If you complete that ritual, you'll die, and so will everyone in this kingdom." Doubt flickered across her face. Then the pendant at her throat pulsed, and her expression hardened again. "Lies," she hissed. "Desperate lies from a desperate woman. You just want your crown back. But I've outgrown you, Mother. I've outgrown this entire world." She raised her hands, and the void creatures surged forward in a wave. My hollow guard met them, and the clash sent shockwaves through the palace. I felt the Deep Ones straining within my chest, pouring more power into me, but I also felt something else, a weakening, a tearing, as if the very foundations of reality were beginning to fray. "If we continue this battle," the Deep Ones whispered, "the palace will fall. The city will fall. Perhaps the world itself will tear." They were right. The forces we were wielding were never meant to clash in the mortal realm. Every blow struck between my shadows and her void spawn carved another crack in reality. I had to end this quickly. I dismissed my hollow guard with a gesture, letting them dissolve back into shadow. Seraphine's creatures froze, confused by the sudden lack of opposition. "Stop," I commanded. "Call them back. Let us settle this as we should have from the beginning, as mother and daughter." Seraphine laughed, the sound brittle and slightly unhinged. "Mother and daughter? You stopped being my mother the day you chose the kingdom over me. Every decision, every moment, it was always duty first, always the crown before your own child." The words struck deeper than her blade had, because there was truth in them. I thought of all the times I'd missed her childhood milestones for matters of state. The tears I'd been too busy to dry, the fears I'd been too distracted to soothe. I'd loved her. Gods, I'd loved her more than life itself, but I'd shown that love through preparation for rule, through lessons in statecraft and duty, never through simple presence. "You're right," I said quietly, and saw shock register on her face. "I failed you as a mother. I was so determined to prepare you to rule that I forgot to simply love you. But Seraphine, that doesn't excuse this. You've condemned yourself and everyone in this kingdom to oblivion." "The Whisperer will protect me," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "The Whisperer is using you. Look at your pendant. Truly look at it with more than mortal eyes." The Deep Ones lent me their sight, and I extended it to her, forcing her to see what I saw. The pendant wasn't just a focus for power, it was an anchor, a hook embedded in her soul, slowly draining her essence to feed something vast and hungry waiting in the spaces between worlds. Seraphine's hand flew to the pendant, and for a moment, I saw my daughter again, young, frightened, realizing she'd made a terrible mistake. Then the pendant pulsed, and the Shadow Man materialized between us. "Enough," it said, its voice resonating with otherworldly harmonics. "The child is mine, bound by blood and oath. Her essence will open the way, and the Void King will feast upon this tired old world. Your interference ends here, Hollow Queen." It gestured, and reality tore open behind Seraphine. Through the gap, I glimpsed something vast and terrible, a presence of such absolute emptiness that even the Deep Ones recoiled in my chest. "No!" I surged forward, but the Shadow Man raised a hand, an invisible force slammed me backward. "The ritual is already begun," it said. "The new moon rises, the gateway opens, and your daughter's heart, so full of ambition, so easy to manipulate, will be the key that turns the lock." Seraphine stood frozen, caught between the Shadow Man and the widening tear in reality. I could see understanding dawning in her eyes, true understanding of what she'd done, what she'd agreed to. "Mother," she whispered, and in that word was all the fear of a child lost in the dark. The Deep Ones spoke through me, their ancient voices layering mine. "We can close the gateway, but it will require power, the kind of power that comes only from willing sacrifice." I understood immediately. The hollow in my chest, the vessel where my heart had been, could serve as a seal. If I poured all my power, all the Deep One's strength, into closing that tear between worlds, the gateway would slam shut. But I would die, truly die, with no resurrection this time. And Seraphine would live, would keep the crown she'd stolen, would rule in my place. The Deep One sensed my thoughts. "You hesitate. She betrayed you. She murdered you. You owe her nothing." But I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw past the ambitious usurper to the frightened child underneath. A child I'd failed, whose need for approval I'd neglected until she sought it in the whispers of darkness. "She's my daughter," I said simply, "and I'm her mother. That means something, even now. Especially now." I began walking toward the tear in reality, feeling the Deep One's power gathering in the hollow of my chest. With each step, I drew more of it forth, weaving it into a pattern of binding and sealing. "What are you doing?" Seraphine cried out. "What I should have done long ago," I replied. "Protecting you even from yourself." The Shadow Man moved to intercept me, but I was beyond his reach now. The Deep Ones had given me everything, holding nothing back, and the power flowing through me was sufficient to brush aside his interference. I reached the tear in reality and placed my hands on either side of it. The Void King's presence pressed against me from the other side. Infinite hunger, infinite emptiness, the end of all things. "Seraphine," I said, not turning to look at her. "Live well. Rule wisely. Learn from my mistakes, and from your own. And know that despite everything, I loved you." "Mother, no. I didn't mean. I never wanted." "I know," I said gently. "I know." Then I pulled the gateway closed. The force required to seal a tear between worlds is not gentle. It feels like being torn apart at the molecular level, like having your soul shredded and rewoven and shredded again. The Deep Ones screamed as they poured out of me, spending themselves utterly to knit reality back together. The Shadow Man shrieked as his connection to the Void was severed. Without the gateway, without the Void King's power flowing through him, he was just smoke and whispers. He dissipated like morning fog, his final words a curse that faded into silence. The pendant around Seraphine's neck cracked, then crumbled to dust, and I collapsed to the marble floor, feeling the last of the Deep One's power drain away. The hollow in my chest was truly empty now. No heart, no ancient gods, nothing but a void that was rapidly pulling the rest of me into darkness. Seraphine was there suddenly, catching me before my head hit the stone. Tears streamed down her face, and through my fading vision, I saw genuine anguish there. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I thought you didn't love me. I thought you only cared about the crown, and I was so angry, and the whisper made it seem so reasonable and—" "Hush," I whispered, raising a trembling hand to her cheek. "We all make mistakes. The question is what we learn from them. I can't rule without you. I don't know how. I'm not ready. No one ever is. But you'll learn. You're smarter than I was at your age, and now you're wiser too. You've seen the cost of unchecked ambition. Let that guide you." Around us, the court had begun to gather, Lord Craven, the guards, the nobles who'd stood silent during my fall. They were watching this moment, and I knew what would come next. Seraphine would need to make a choice about how to explain what had happened, how to frame this story for the kingdom. "Tell them the truth," I said, reading her thoughts in her expression. "Tell them you were deceived, that you made a terrible mistake, and that you'll spend your reign atoning for it. They'll respect honesty more than excuses, but they'll never trust me. They'll never accept me as queen after what I've done." I smiled, feeling my vision dimming further. "Then you'll have to earn their trust, day by day, decision by decision. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is." The last of my strength was fading. I could feel my body beginning to shut down, the price of hosting the Deep Ones, and then expelling them finally coming due. "Seraphine," I breathed. "One last thing." "Yes." "The kingdom. There's a ledger in my study, hidden panel behind the north bookshelf. It contains everything you need to know. Treaties, alliances, secrets, and letters. Letters I wrote to you over the years but never sent. Read them. They'll explain so much. I will. I promise. I felt myself slipping away, the darkness calling me with a voice that was neither cruel nor kind, simply inevitable. But before I let go, I needed to know one thing. Do you understand now? I asked. Why I made the choices I did. Why the crown was never more important than you, even though it seemed that way. Seraphine was silent for a long moment, and I feared I would die without hearing her answer. Then she nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. You were trying to prepare me for this, for the weight of rule, the impossible choices, the sacrifices required. You wanted me to be strong enough to carry the crown without it crushing me. Yes, I whispered. And you will be. You already are. You're stronger than I ever was because you felt both sides of power, the wielding and the losing. That will make you wise. My eyes were closing now, and I lacked the strength to open them again. But I felt Seraphine take my hand, holding it tightly as if she could anchor me to life through sheer force of will. I love you, Mother, she said, her voice breaking. I never stopped, even when I hated you. I'm so sorry it took this to make me say it. I love you too, I managed to say. I always have. I always will. Even in death, I'll love you. That's what it means to be a mother. The darkness was complete now, warm and welcoming in its own way. I felt the deep one's final whisper, a farewell from ancient beings who'd tasted the light one last time through my eyes. Rest now, Elara Morgaine. Queen. Mother. Sacrifice. Your duty is done. And I let go. Queen Seraphine Morgaine stood in the memorial garden, gazing at the statue of her mother. The sculptor had captured her in her final moment, not as the hollow queen filled with dark power, but as the woman who'd chosen love over vengeance, sacrifice over revenge. 5 years had passed since that terrible day. 5 years of ruling a kingdom that had every reason to hate her, yet had slowly, grudgingly come to respect her. She'd done as her mother instructed. She told the truth, all of it. The betrayal, the pact with the void, the gateway, and her mother's final sacrifice. She'd expected riots, expected to be torn from the throne and executed. Instead, after a long, tense silence, Lord Craven had done something unexpected. He'd knelt before her and spoken words that still echoed in her memory. Your mother once told me that the measure of a ruler is not in their triumphs, but in how they face their failures. You have faced yours with honesty. That is a beginning. The beginning had been hard. There were factions that wanted her removed, nobles who saw her weakness and tried to exploit it. But she'd learned from her mother's letters, from the wisdom hidden in those never-sent words. She'd learned to be firm but fair, to listen before acting, to rule with both strength and compassion. And she'd learned to ask for help. The hollow cells had been sealed, filled with consecrated earth, and bound with every warding spell the kingdom's mages could devise. The deep ones slept again in their ancient prison, their brief taste of freedom through her mother a memory that would fade over millennia. But sometimes, in dreams, Seraphine heard their whispers. Not malevolent, not tempting, but simply remembering. They'd loved her mother in their own way, these forgotten gods. They'd given everything to help her save her daughter. Your Majesty! Seraphine turned to find her own daughter, 3 years old, with her grandmother's eyes, running toward her through the garden. Behind her walked the nursemaid, apologizing for letting the child escape. Seraphine waved away the apology and scooped her daughter into her arms. "Mama, who is that?" the little girl asked, pointing at the statue. "That," Seraphine said softly, "is your grandmother, Queen Elara the Wise. She was the greatest ruler this kingdom ever knew, and she loved me more than I deserved." "Tell me about her." And Seraphine did. She told her daughter about the woman who'd ruled for 40 years, who'd made hard choices and harder sacrifices. She told her about the betrayal and the forgiveness, about the darkness and the light. But most of all, she told her daughter about love, the kind of love that endures even death, even betrayal, even the end of worlds. The kind of love that transforms monsters back into humans and gives the fallen strength to rise again. As the sun set over the capital, Queen Seraphine held her daughter close and made a silent promise to the statue, to her mother's memory, to the woman who'd given everything so that her child might live. She would be worthy of that sacrifice. She would rule with wisdom born of failure and compassion forged in the fire of her mistakes. She would be the queen her mother had prepared her to be, not through harsh lessons, but through the ultimate lesson, that love, in the end, is the only power that truly matters. The deep ones whispered their approval in dreams that night. And in the memorial garden, if one looked closely at the statue in the moonlight, one might see the faintest smile on the stone queen's face, as if even in marble, even in death, Ilara Morgaine knew that her greatest creation was not the kingdom she'd ruled, but the daughter she'd saved. The end. Please follow and like for more videos.